There's nothing quite like a solid 8 hours sleep. If there's one non-writing related piece of advice I'd like to relay to all students, it's that you should get more sleep. Sleep restores energy. It makes you dream. And dreams are where you dance, dance, dance. And yet, time and again, students always counter-argue that they'd love to get more sleep, but they have too much homework. Or they have part-time jobs. Or they have their bird-watching club. And I have to concede that they make valid points. And as someone who's trying to make an argument about the value of sleep, I look pretty stubborn or irrational if I don't acknowledge that there are legitimate reasons why students often have less than ideal sleep schedules. So if I were writing a paper arguing that students should get more sleep, and I'll keep my point simple for now, my thesis will simply say that students must sleep for 8 hours every night. And for support, I'll argue that, number 1, sleep helps us manage stress and anxiety. Point 2, sleep keeps us physically healthy. And point 3, sleep makes us more productive. So I'm using my basic 5-paragraph essay structure with clear topic sentences. I'll bring in some nice evidence and analysis to support my points. But I'm also going to include at least one full paragraph-length counter-argument that goes against my position. I'll present this counter-argument very neatly in a nice topic sentence. And the counter-argument will attack either my thesis generally, or it might attack one of the more specific supporting arguments that I presented in a body paragraph. For example, I could counter-argue that university life involves a complex balancing act that often challenges the ideal of consistently getting 8 hours of sleep. Now, of course, I'll do my best to explain that opposition accurately and fairly, citing the best evidence I can for support. Now, I've just got a rough draft here. I'm going to have to do some research to flesh out my arguments with solid evidence. Knowing, of course, that citing good, credible sources, even against my position, helps establish my credibility as a writer overall. And in doing this, I'm conceding that the opposing side does make fair and valid points. This should come across implicitly in the quality of the evidence and analysis I present in my counter-argument. But I might also tweak my topic sentence to emphasize my concession, because it makes a nice transition from my supporting argument paragraphs. For example, I might begin my counter by saying, although sleep is clearly important for students, it's also true that university life involves a complex balancing act, etc. So just to recap, here is my structure. Now, obviously, I can't end the paper with my counter-argument because it weakens my thesis. So I'll also need to add a rebuttal here. This will be a separate paragraph that rebuts or counters my counter-argument by exploring the limitations or problems with that counter-argument. For example, if my counter is that students are too busy to sleep for 8 hours every night, my rebuttal might say that although students are busy, getting enough sleep will help them manage their time better. And of course, I'll flesh this out into a fully researched rebuttal paragraph later on. And I'll be especially sure that I'm not repeating or overlapping any of my previous supporting arguments in that rebuttal paragraph. The rebuttal will be making a distinct point on its own. So you can see how the rebuttal not only attacks my counter, but it reinforces my thesis by building extra support with a new argument, in this case about time management. Now, all that being said, is my thesis going to convince everybody? Well, maybe the problem is not so much with the arguments themselves, but with my tone here. It kind of makes me sound very strict. Students must sleep for 8 hours every night, like I'm dictating my position. But if I soften my language just a little bit here, students should try to sleep for 8 hours every night. All of a sudden, I seem a little more open-minded, less absolute in my position. And what I'm doing here is using a qualifier, a word or phrase used to show probability rather than 100% certainty. Ideally, this will make me more likable to the reader. It shows in a very subtle way that I'm not 100% sure of myself, and therefore, this improves my credibility. In his seminal research guide, The Craft of Research, rhetoric scholar Wayne Booth cites an example from Watson and Crick, who discovered the structure of DNA in 1953. And when they reported their findings to the scientific community, they were probably pretty certain about their work. But notice how they used qualifiers throughout. We wish to suggest, in our opinion, we believe, they appear to be. This makes them sound, again, a little less certain, a little more humble. And this is a super easy trick you can use in your papers as well. Adding simple qualifiers to soften your argument. Students should try to sleep for 8 hours. Sufficient sleep may improve their physical health. 8 hours of sleep is considered optimal. Or you can use more complex qualifiers by bundling counterarguments into your claims. For example, although students are very busy, getting more sleep could help them manage their time better because sleep is proven to improve focus and motivation. I'm using a special lexical formula for my complex qualifier here. I'm starting with the words although or even though, then I'm inserting my counter, my main argument, and then my reason to support that argument. This makes a really nice sentence structure for the topic sentence of a rebuttal paragraph because it presents a smooth transition from the counter that came before it. So there you have it, counters, rebuttals, and qualifiers. Try bringing them into your next research paper. They can be very useful in your writing, almost as useful as a good night's sleep. Thanks for watching.
Get it right.